The quiet town of Willow Creek had always been known for its peaceful streets and friendly faces. But on a stormy night, as rain drummed against the rooftops, a pair of shadows slipped through the alleyways, eyes glinting with mischief. They were young, brimming with the misplaced bravado of youth, convinced they could take whatever they wanted without consequence. Tonight, they had set their sights on the old man who lived at the end of Elm Street. Old Mr. Donovan was a fixture in the town. With his silver hair and deep-set eyes, he had lived on Elm for as long as anyone could remember. People often whispered stories about him. He was a soldier, they said, but to the thieves he was just an old man, feeble, vulnerable, a perfect target. They snickered to themselves, planning their approach. As the rain washed over the cobblestones, the thieves crept toward his modest yellow house. They could see the glow of a lamp flickering in the window, casting shadows that danced on the walls. The doors were locked, but they knew how to manipulate the flimsy exterior. One of them, Jim, was all too confident, saying, "This will be easy." With practiced ease, they picked the lock and slipped inside, the musty scent of the old man's home filling their nostrils. They laughed quietly, rich with arrogance, imagining the treasures that lay within. Little did they know Mr. Donovan was not the feeble fool they anticipated. He sat in his favorite armchair, a thick quilt pulled over his legs, listening to the rain as he sipped a cup of chamomile tea. In his mind, the memories of his youth flickered to life like the static on an old television set. He recalled the harrowing days of war, nights spent under the stars with comrades, their laughter mingling with the distant sounds of battle. Just as the peace washed over him, the unmistakable creak of the front door shattered the tranquility. The corner of Mr. Donovan's mouth twitched into a knowing smile. He had heard tales of thieves prowling at night, and he had prepared for this, just as he had prepared for countless challenges in his life. He quietly set his tea down and reached beneath the chair, revealing an old wooden cane, sturdy and strong, a relic from his military days. The thieves sneaked into the living room, scanning the space. They spotted a small safe embedded in the wall, a smirk spreading across Jim's face. "Just a few quick turns and we'll be rich," he whispered, excited eyes glinting. But as their eyes adjusted to the dim light, they didn't notice the old man stepping closer until he was right behind them. He asked, his voice steady, a calm anchor in the rising tension. They spun around, startled. Mr. Donovan stood tall, cane poised like a knight's sword. "You've made a mistake coming here," he said, the corners of his mouth curving into an unsettling grin. The thieves laughed, hastily regaining their bravado. "Back off, old man. This doesn't concern you," Jim stammered, but his bravado wavered, something buried deep inside him whispering that this wasn't the encounter he had envisioned. "Oh, it concerns me greatly," Mr. Donovan replied, his voice calm as the sea during a storm. In a flash, the atmosphere shifted. Fear crept into the hearts of the thieves. They had expected a frail old man, perhaps a helpless target. Instead, here was a man who radiated wisdom and strength, a living embodiment of defiance against their youthful arrogance. With a sudden movement, Mr. Donovan gripped his cane and swung it with surprising speed, catching Jim off guard. The cane struck his legs, sending him stumbling forward. "I suggest you think twice before becoming a nuisance," the old man growled. Shock coursed through the other thief, his mind racing. He yelled, but the conviction was gone from his voice. They had underestimated him, and the old man was using every ounce of experience he had to regain control. Jim, stumbling to recover from the hit, scrambled for his pocket, pulling out a knife. He waved it wildly, but the threat only revealed his panic. The blade gleamed in the soft lamplight, but Mr. Donovan stood utterly undeterred. "Do you think a weapon frightens me? I've faced much worse in my life than a mere child with a knife," he said, his voice vibrating with authority. The shadows lengthened around them, the tension thick enough to cut. With a quick, deliberate motion, Donovan stepped closer, his cane swinging low. He hit the knife out of Jim's hand with deft precision. The blade clattered against the floor, harmless and forgotten. In that moment of surprise, the old man's strength shone through, revealing the depths of his character forged through years of battling life's storms. The other thief, now visibly fear-stricken, turned to flee. He tugged Jim's arm, desperate to escape this unexpected nightmare. But the old man wouldn't have it. "Not so fast," he said, his voice booming, echoing through the small living room. With a surprising burst of speed, he lunged forward, catching the second thief by his collar and yanking him back. Fear morphed into desperation as the young men realized they were trapped. In their eyes, they saw not just an old man, but a world's worth of experience. A soldier, a father, a friend, a man who had fought for his life and his loved ones far harder than they ever had. "Please," Jim whimpered, his bravado crumbling. Donovan replied, his voice steady yet penetrating, "You think the world is just a game." Instead of calling the police or unleashing his full wrath, he stood, imposing yet measured, his cane resting on the floor before him. "You both are young. You have a chance to choose a better path." They stared at him, their fear mixed with confusion. "Honor." Jim spat, defiance flickering in his eyes. The old man's expression softened for a moment, his gaze drifting toward the window, where the rain continued to wash the world outside. "When you've lost friends in battle," he said, his voice lower, "when you've put your life on the line for others, you learn." Thunder rolled outside, shaking the clouds. Suddenly, something shifted in the atmosphere, unfurling the tension that had lived in that room. The boys looked at each other, eyes reflecting the realization dawning upon them as a flicker of understanding broke through the fog of their arrogance. "Please," the second thief whispered, his voice cracking. Mr. Donovan released his grip on the collar, allowing the boy to step back, visibly trembling. Jim and his friend huddled together, drenched in confusion and despair as they stood in the presence of a man who embodied wisdom and fearlessness, a man who had fought demons they couldn't even begin to understand. The old man continued, his tone firm yet compassionate. "You've made mistakes, we all have." He stepped back, cane in hand, standing like a guardian against the incoming storm. The young men exchanged glances, and something in their hearts began to shift. They might not have had a hero's tale to tell, but in this moment they sensed the glimmering possibility of redemption. "We won't come back," Jim stammered, voice shaky. And in an instant the pair turned, rushing to the door and bursting into the rain, the cold, relentless downpour washing away their resolve, but somehow also cleansing them. The hours passed slowly for Mr. Donovan. He settled back into his armchair, heart pounding but calm. He patted his cane lightly against the floor, reflecting on choices made, lessons learned, and the unexpected paths life sometimes forged. He could have easily called the authorities, but deep down, he knew fear wasn't the answer. Change had to start from within. The next generation, whether lost or misguided, still held the spark of potential. They just needed someone to show them the way. The rain poured, but the night felt different somehow. The air was heavy, and the storm passed, but in its wake was a profound sense of hope, a reminder that even in a world filled with chaos, there remains a chance for redemption. Mr. Donovan sipped his tea, the warmth wrapping around him as he closed his eyes, being swept away by memories of the past and the whispers of a brighter tomorrow. A cold wind howled through the empty streets of Crestwood. The moon hung high, casting eerie shadows on the worn-out sidewalks. Most of the townsfolk had long since closed their doors, settling in for the night. But in a cozy little house at the end of Maple Lane, a light still flickered. It was there that old man Corbin sat, sipping his chamomile tea, lost in memories of a life filled with both triumph and loss. On this particular night, two figures lurked in the darkness. Sam and Theo, two young thieves, pressed their backs against the brick wall of Corbin's house, eyes wide with anticipation. They appeared confident, reckless even, fueled by the thrill of the hunt. Sam, the bolder of the two, whispered, "This will be easier than taking candy from a baby." Theo nodded, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "Relax, old people are always weak. They just sit around all day watching TV," Sam scoffed, dismissing Theo's concerns. They crept closer, hearts racing with excitement and mischief. Sam picked the lock with hands that trembled slightly, adrenaline coursing through his veins. As the door clicked open, they entered, a rush of cold air following them inside. The old man was unaware of their presence, engrossed in a book. The glow of a solitary lamp illuminated his weathered face, revealing deep lines that told stories of resilience. "Rich old fool," Sam muttered, scanning the room for anything of value. The house was filled with trinkets and memories, a small statue from a far-off land, dusty frames of family photos, and shelves lined with books. "Let's find the cash and get out of here," Sam urged. He moved toward a small safe embedded in the wall while Theo hesitated, scanning the room for any sign of life. A chill crept down his spine. He whispered, but Sam waved him off. Sam snapped, fumbling with the combination lock. The safe clicked open and his eyes lit up. A handful of old coins and crumpled bills rested inside. He exclaimed, hands reaching in greedily. Just then a voice cut through the air, smooth yet commanding. They froze, turning slowly to face Old Man Corbin, who stood in the doorway like a guardian of the night. His presence was unwavering, eyes sharp and clear despite his age. Sam opened his mouth to scoff, but the power behind the old man's gaze silenced him. Sam spat, trying to hold onto his bravado. "To give you both a chance," Corbin replied, stepping closer, cane in hand. "You have a choice." Theo, fighting against the fear creeping into his chest, took a step back. Corbin straightened, the gleam in his eyes flickering with a lifetime of experience. "You think you are tough. You think this is a game." He gestured to a framed picture on the wall showing a younger version of himself in military uniform, strength radiating from his posture. "Yeah, right. You look like you can't even lift that cane," Sam taunted, bravado spilling out of him. But the old man simply chuckled, unperturbed. Corbin asked, his voice low yet filled with weight, "It's more than a walking stick. It's a reminder of battles fought and won. To protect those who are weaker." The air in the room grew thick with tension, Sam's arrogance beginning to wane. Theo felt a strange sense of intimidation wash over him. All at once, he could see the confidence in Corbin's posture. This wasn't just some old man. This was someone who had weathered storms and came out standing tall. Sam laughed nervously, but deep down, the bravado was fading fast. "Actually, it's more painful to be underestimated," Corbin said, stepping forward with authority. "You see, I've faced thieves and worse, and what I've learned is that they rarely look like me. You both think you're smart." Sam's bravado slipped further. He glanced back at Theo, the indecision palpable between them. "Let's just get out of here," Theo urged, voice shaking. But Sam felt cornered by the old man's presence. We can take him," he blurted out, clenching his fists. Yet the doubt gnawed at him whether he believed it or not. Corbin smiled, a strange mix of understanding and compassion. "You are young. You think strength is about power, but it's really about choice." Sam spat with half-hearted anger, his bravado struggling against a surging fear he couldn't quite shake. "You're just an old man." But that's where you are wrong," Corbin said, raising his cane and pointing it at the door. "You see, every individual has the potential to be stronger than they were yesterday. Your strength lies in your decisions." Sam's heart raced, the old man's words piercing through his bravado like arrows. Theo stood trembling, the inner conflict burning bright. They were thieves, but at what cost? The thrill of the chase ran thin against the weight of the old man's wisdom. "Your choice," Corbin pressed, his voice steady. Theo swallowed hard. Part of him wanted to flee, but there was something deeply unsettling about the old man, a strength that belied his appearance, a strength they had misjudged completely. Sam, desperate to save face, gestured toward Corbin. "You think you're tough?" He shouted, but his voice trembled. With the cane held firmly, Corbin took a step forward, the air around him shifting. "You've dealt with petty things. You've yet to see true struggle." The room, once filled with tension, now pulsed with something else, a raw, electric possibility. Sam glanced at Theo, seeking confirmation, yet all he found was fear mirroring his own. Sam shouted, lunging at Corbin without thinking. It was a reckless move fueled by youthful arrogance. But the moment he crossed the threshold into the old man's space, something extraordinary happened. Corbin sidestepped with ease, swinging his cane expertly. It caught Sam in the side, not enough to hurt, but enough to throw him off balance. He stumbled, crashing into the coffee table, knocking over books and trinkets. Theo gasped, eyes wide with disbelief at how effortlessly Corbin had deflected the attack. The old man stood tall, unyielding, like a mountain standing firm against a gale. An ancient wisdom resonated in his stance, a truth that even Sam couldn't ignore anymore. Corbin said, voice steady, firm. "Strength isn't about muscles or bravado. It's about knowing who you are. It's about protecting what is right." Sitting on the floor, Sam's bravado crumbled, replaced by a raw sense of vulnerability. He looked at the old man, realization dawning. You're not weak at all, he whispered, voice barely audible through trembling lips. Corbin offered a hand, his expression softening. Neither are you if you decide to change. Theo stood frozen, staring at the scene unfolding before him. The old man had taken control of the situation with wisdom and strength, challenging not just their actions but their identities. He took a deep breath, the realization hitting him hard. They were both at a crossroads. In a moment of honesty, Sam blinked back tears, addressing the old man more maturely now. Maybe we've messed up. The acknowledgement shook Theo out of his stupor. He stepped forward, his voice steadier now. We. Corbin nodded, lowering his cane and allowing the moment to hang between them like a flickering candle flame. You've made mistakes, yes, but all of us have. It's what we choose to do after that matters. Sam and Theo looked at each other, a silent agreement passing between them. The fear that had once held them captive began to fade, replaced by the desire for change, for redemption. With deep breaths taken, their walls crumbled, a weight lifted. The night no longer felt like a threat but a new beginning. They stood together, side by side, waiting for old man Corbin to guide them forward. Come, he said, gesturing to the door. As they stepped into the night, the world felt different. They hadn't just escaped with their lives, they had regained something far more valuable: hope. A chance to forge a new identity and a promise of potential that stretched before them like an open road. Thank you, Sam murmured as they walked into the cool air. Corbin nodded, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Remember, strength comes from understanding. The three figures disappeared into the shadowy streets of Crestwood, leaving behind an old house filled with memories and the dust of choices made long ago. In the quiet darkness, the echoes of the past faded, giving way to the promise of a brighter tomorrow. A shrill scream pierced the quiet night, echoing down the empty streets of Maplewood. It didn't belong to a victim or a frightened passerby, but to the two young men sprawled awkwardly on the ground, their plans unraveled in an instant. Their hearts raced, fear and disbelief intertwining in a suffocating grip. You see, they had thought the old man was weak. Over the past few weeks, whispers in the town hinted that Mr. Emerson, the reclusive figure at the end of the road, was an easy mark. They envisioned a simple heist, a way to grab some quick cash without any complications. Little did they know that the old man had stories of resilience buried beneath his frail exterior. As the midnight hour rolled in, Sam and Mike approached the dimly lit house, shadows cast long by the flickering streetlight. Sam, wide-eyed with anticipation, whispered, "This will be a piece of cake. Look at him." Mike shifted uncomfortably, unease bubbling beneath his bravado. "You sure about this?" But Sam waved his hand dismissively. "Come on, he's just an old man." With a reckless determination, Sam picked the lock on the back door, the satisfying click echoing in the stillness. Inside, the air felt stagnant, charged with tension and unspoken memories. Dusty furniture littered the room, the remnants of a life once vibrant now shrouded in gloom. "Let's grab what we can and get out," Sam urged, prying open a drawer filled with faded photographs and crumbling letters. Each item spoke of days long past, tales of love and heartache buried within their paper confines. Mike hesitated, captivated by the history that surrounded them. Sam replied impatiently, tossing aside the photographs as if they were worthless. As they rummaged through the old man's belongings, the atmosphere shifted. The quietness felt heavy and Mike fidgeted nervously. He whispered, the anxiety tightening around his throat. "Then we run," Sam smirked, refusing to acknowledge the fear creeping into his own heart. He's just some old guy. Unbeknownst to them, Mr. Emerson was more than just a frail elder living alone. He was a war veteran with a past filled with tribulations that had forged him into a man of strength and resolve. He sat in his armchair, the fading light of the evening casting soft shadows across his face, reflecting the battles he fought long ago. The night was meant for rest, a retreat into cherished memories, unaware that two marauders had invaded his sanctuary. Suddenly, a creak of the floorboards broke through the stillness, startling Sam and Mike. They spun around, eyes wide, hearts racing. Standing there was Mr. Emerson, his posture straight, eyes piercing, a cane resting beside him. Sam's bravado faltered, for the old man stood tall, resolute as a soldier. The words stumbled out as he searched for a coherent response, but Mr. Emerson held his gaze unwavering. "I suggest you leave." Emerson's voice carried the weight of 1,000 experiences, cutting through the air like a fine blade. For a moment, the room held its breath. Mike's heartbeat thundered in his ears, a mix of fear and panic coursing through him. "Yeah, we didn't mean any harm, just a little mistake," he faltered, stepping back instinctively, sensing the energy shift. Mr. Emerson's expression softened just a fraction, but the resolve in his eyes remained fierce. Mistakes can be costly. With adrenaline surging, Sam summoned what courage was left within him. "Listen, old man, we don't want any trouble," he shouted, forcing a laugh, trying to mask his fear behind a facade of bravado. "Strength doesn't come from threats," Mr. Emerson replied coolly, his voice unyielding like a rock in a storm. In that instant, time felt suspended. Sam and Mike could feel the air crackle with something powerful. The old man had a presence that demanded attention, respect. The bravado that had fueled their plan crumbled, revealing the raw vulnerability beneath. "Go on, take what you want," Mr. Emerson sighed, gesturing to the mess they had made. The boys looked at each other, confusion swirling in their minds. Mike asked quietly, turning the words over uncertain. "You think money will bring you happiness," he said, stepping closer. "But it won't. It never does." Fury flickered in Sam's eyes, ignited by embarrassment. He barked, but something in the old man's calm demeanor left him shaken. "I'm someone who knows the price of choices," Mr. Emerson retorted. "I fought for freedom, for a life worth living." In that moment, Sam faltered, a wave of doubt crashing against his chest. He could sense that this old man had known suffering, the kind that left scars both visible and hidden. He shot back, but his voice lacked conviction. "I think toughness comes from within," Emerson replied. As Sam's bravado fell away, he found himself looking into the old man's eyes, searching for a hint of weakness. Instead, he found wisdom, a depth he had never anticipated. Something deep within him stirred, an awareness that this wasn't just about money. It was about choices, identity, and who they would ultimately become. Suddenly, a thought pierced through the fog. "You're just an old man alone in a big house," Sam spat, frustration spilling out in a desperate attempt to regain control. But Emerson's gaze remained steadfast, unyielding. "And you're two boys standing at a crossroads. You can choose to walk a better path," the old man replied, his voice steady, filled with an unshakable truth. Feeling backed into a corner, anger bubbled up in Sam, raw and unfiltered. "What do you know about us?" he shouted, but deep down, a flicker of doubt gnawed at his resolve. "I know enough," Emerson said, his voice calm and clear. "I know that in this world where you're standing, all choices have consequences. You can choose to take or you can choose to give." For a moment, silence enveloped the room as realization hit Mike like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just an old man. He was a man of principle, a survivor who wouldn't back down. The courage that stood before them was far beyond their expectations. Seeing Mike's hesitation, Emerson took a step closer, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "You don't have to be what you've always been. You can be better than this." As his words hung in the air, something shifted in Sam, something that could no longer be ignored. For the first time, he realized they weren't just players in a game. They were participants in a life that demanded meaning beyond mere survival. Sam said, uncertainty creeping into his voice. The remaining bravado began to crack, revealing the vulnerability he had tried so hard to suppress. "Because I've been where you are," Mr. Emerson replied, voice steady as the ground beneath their feet. "I made poor choices, lost friends in the process, and learned that true strength lies in redemption." The moment lingered, suspended like a breath held in anticipation. Sam looked at Mike, who struggled to find his voice. Maybe we don't want to be as lost as we are," he finally admitted. "Then let's change that," Emerson said, though compassion and firmness danced in his eyes. In that instant, the air shifted. Sam felt the weight of the situation pressing upon him, and suddenly the path ahead seemed less daunting. Perhaps they didn't have to walk this road of confusion. Perhaps there was a better way. Mr. Emerson asked, a challenge resting in his words. Sam hesitated but felt the groundwork shifting beneath him, opening up new possibilities. I The truth slipped out raw and unvarnished. "Neither do I," Mike added, quiet but sure, his back straightening as clarity painted the fog of confusion away. "Well then," said Emerson, breaking into a warm smile that lit his deep-set eyes. With newfound clarity, Sam and Mike found their footing, no longer leaning on reckless desires but seeking something more meaningful. They stepped back, an unspoken bond forming between them, a collective agreement that this was the moment to shift their lives. Mr. Emerson gestured toward the door, opening it wide. "Step outside and see the world anew." They emerged into the cool night air, the stars overhead shimmering like forgotten dreams coming together. As they stepped away from the house, they turned back to Mr. Emerson, who stood framed in the doorway, a guardian of wisdom and hope. "Thank you," Sam called out, feeling the warmth of change begin to seep into his bones. "Remember," Mr. Emerson replied, voice steady and calming, "the power of choice is always yours. Strength comes not from taking but from understanding." As they walked away from the old man's house, a sense of clarity unfolded before them, the weight of their decisions lightening with every step. They were no longer just thieves. They had stepped into the light of possibility, a chance for redemption, and the promise of a better tomorrow. In that quiet town of Maplewood, under a wide expanse of stars, two lives had shifted course. The night had transformed from a treacherous heist to a journey towards self-discovery, a testament to the power of choices made in the face of fear, and the recognition that true strength lies not in bravado, but in understanding and connection. The moon hung low over the sleepy town of Elmwood, casting a pale light on the quiet streets. Crickets sang their nighttime serenade, and the scent of damp earth filled the air. But all was not as peaceful as it seemed. In the shadows, two figures moved with purpose, their hearts racing with excitement and mischief. Sam and Jake had been eyeing Old Man Harris's house for weeks. "He's just an old man," Sam had said, his voice dripping with disdain. "What's he gonna do? Call for help? Just look at him." The bravado in his tone echoed through their conversations, building a false sense of confidence. Tonight was the night. They were set to prove their theory true. Old Man Harris, with his frail body and silver hair, was no match for them. He lived alone at the end of the block, surrounded by whispers of a past filled with loss and secrets. To Sam and Jake, he was just a harmless shadow of his former self, an easy target for a late-night score. As they crouched behind the bushes in front of his house, the wind rustled through the branches, adding an eerie backdrop to their plans. Sam pulled out a small crowbar from his backpack, glancing over at Jake. He whispered, adrenaline coursing through him. "Yeah," Jake replied, but his voice lacked certainty. In the flickering light from the porch, Old Man Harris sat peacefully in his rocking chair, reading a book, completely unaware of the impending danger. "Let's do this," Sam said, determination blazing in his eyes. He crept toward the side window, prying it open with a swift jab of the crowbar. A crack echoed through the night, but their excitement drowned out their worries. They thought they were the masters of this moment. They slipped inside, stealthy as shadows, hearts racing with the thrill of the heist. The living room was filled with memories, photos on the walls of a younger Harris with a family that once filled those empty rooms with laughter. The warmth of those moments clashed with the cold intentions of the two intruders. "Grab anything valuable," Sam urged, rifling through drawers that held trinkets and dusty coins from years gone by. Jake hesitated, the weight of intrusion pressing down on him. He asked, feigning bravado. "Then we'll be out before he knows it," Sam replied, lost in the lure of easy money. But even as he spoke, the nagging feeling of unease festered in Jake's mind. Suddenly, the creak of a floorboard echoed ominously through the house, and the boys froze, heartbeats pounding in their ears. The door creaked open, and Old Man Harris appeared, the dim light casting long shadows across his face. His eyes, sharp and penetrating, seemed to see right through their facades. He asked, his voice steady, yet infused with a power that was palpable in the still air. Sam's bravado faltered the moment their eyes met. Sam stammered, completely caught off guard. The fight or flight instinct kicked in. He thought quickly, but the old man's presence made him feel small and insignificant. Harris replied, stepping closer, cane in hand, his stature suddenly imposing. Despite the frail demeanor, there was a light in his eyes, a mixture of defiance and wisdom that made the boys hesitate. "Look, we don't want any trouble," Jake said, his voice weak, eyes darting between Sam and the old man. Harris didn't move. "It's too late for that." The words sent a shiver down Sam's spine. His voice trembled slightly, the bravado fading like a dying ember. "We can do this the hard way or the easy way," Harris replied, gripping his cane tightly. There was a flicker of something fierce. Was it anger, determination, or both? The boys didn't know, but they felt it. Just then, the old man took a single step forward, and something in the room shifted. It was as if the air itself thickened with tension. Harris stared them down, the wisdom of experience reflected in his gaze. He continued, voice rising slightly. "You think I'm just some weak old fool?" And in that moment the boys faltered. Sam's bravado melted away, replaced by an unshakable realization. They had gravely miscalculated. This man wasn't just a lost relic, he was a survivor, a fighter, and they had underestimated him. Jake pleaded, urgency spiking in his voice as fear slipped between them like cold fingers. But Harris stood firm, cane raised slightly, eyes locked onto their wandering gazes. "You don't understand what you're getting into. The real fight isn't with me." A momentary pause enveloped the room, dense and heavy. Sam exchanged glances with Jake, uncertainty gripping their hearts. What had they gotten themselves into? Harris took another step toward them, and suddenly they found themselves in a stare-down with someone whose strength lay not in his age but in the power of resilience. "You think you're here to take, but in truth, you're the ones who are lost." Jake felt a lump in his throat. We don't know what to do," he admitted, vulnerability spilling out like a secret. There it was, the push of reality, the weight of their choices manifesting right before them. Harris softened slightly, lowering his cane. "It's okay. We all have low points, but it's how we choose to get up that defines us." Sam could feel his walls crumbling, the harsh reality of their situation hitting home. This wasn't about money. It was about integrity, self-worth, and facing the choices they'd made. As their bravado slipped away, the truth began to lay bare before them. "I don't want to be this person anymore," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. It was a confession more for himself than for anyone else. Harris watched them intently. Then change. The air felt electric, every heartbeat pounding like a drum of realization. The boys were in over their heads, but the burden of their actions began to dissipate, transformed by the power of choice. Suddenly, the night outside seemed less daunting, a world filled with opportunities waiting to be discovered. Sam took a deep breath, feeling a flicker of courage ignite inside him. "We're sorry for what we did. We didn't mean to intrude." Old man Harris nodded, the tension releasing slightly from his posture. "We all make mistakes, boys. The key is to learn from them. You can walk away from this with a lesson or with nothing at all." Jake's heart raced as they stood on the precipice of change. "We want to learn," he said, voice shaky but sincere. "And that's the first step," Harris replied, the warmth of understanding lighting his features. As the boys turned to leave, a weight lifted from their shoulders, an inner freedom flowered amidst the ruins of their plans. The dark clouds of their past began to lift, revealing the dawn of possibility ahead. As they stepped outside into the cool night air, the world felt different, vibrant, full of potential. The thrill of the heist had turned into an awakening, an epiphany born from confrontation. Turning back to the old man, Sam paused for a moment, gratitude filling his heart. "Thank you," he said earnestly. Harris nodded, a knowing smile gracing his lips. "Remember what you've learned tonight." With those words ringing in their ears, Sam and Jake walked away from the house that would forever mark a significant turning point in their lives. They entered a world that no longer looked so dark, no longer felt so forbidden. As they took to the streets under the canopy of stars, they felt something noteworthy shift within them. Courage blossomed in their hearts, unveiling the promise of second chances. They found they didn't have to be defined by their past mistakes. They could choose to rise and become better men. And so, the adventure began anew. The journey toward understanding their true selves lay ahead, the possibilities boundless now that the lesson had been learned. True strength and resilience do not dwell in age or appearance, but in the choices we make every single day. With heads held high and hearts filled with hope, they walked toward the uncharted future, leaving behind the darkness of their former selves, lighting the way toward becoming who they were meant to be. The old man had proven them wrong, not by force but through the power of understanding, courage, and the undeniable weight of choice. The night was thick with tension, the air heavy with the scent of impending rain. In the small town of Briarwood, where the streets were usually calm, two figures slinked through the shadows, whispering recklessly about their plan. Sam and Jake were young, full of bravado and reckless ambition, convinced that tonight would be their ticket to easy money. They had set their sights on the old man who lived at the end of Elm Street, a man they thought was weak and defenseless. Look at him, sitting alone in that big house. He's probably just watching TV, Sam chuckled, his eyes glinting with youthful arrogance. Jake hesitated for a moment, a gnawing feeling tugging at his gut. I don't know, man. What if he's got some tricks up his sleeve? Sam shot back, waving his hand dismissively. It's just an old man. How much trouble can he really be? With that, they crept closer to the house. The full moon illuminated their path, casting long shadows on the ground. They reached the back door and Sam pulled out a small crowbar, heart racing with anticipation. He pried the door open and it creaked ominously. Inside, darkness wrapped around them like a heavy blanket. Stay quiet, Sam whispered, stepping inside. The air was thick with dust and the remnants of a life once vibrant. They flicked on a flashlight, illuminating a small living room filled with faded photographs and old furniture. The walls whispered stories of love, loss, and memories buried in time. Grab anything valuable, Sam urged, rifling through drawers and tossing aside trinkets carelessly. Jake felt a pang of guilt as he examined a picture of a smiling family, their eyes shining with joy. He hesitated, the weight of their intrusion beginning to sink in. Suddenly they heard a sound that sent chills down their spines, a soft creak from somewhere deep within the house. Panic bubbled up inside Jake. He gasped, eyes darting around frantically. Just an old house settling, Sam replied, but even he felt a flicker of unease. They continued searching, their hearts pounding as they turned a corner to find a narrow hallway. Then out of the shadows, a figure emerged. The old man stood there, his silhouette framed by the dim light from the living room. He was frail, white hair framing a weathered face, yet somehow he radiated an aura of strength that sent an instinctual fear coursing through Sam and Jake. His voice was calm but authoritative, cutting through the tension like a knife. Sam's bravado faltered. The words tangled in his throat, replaced by a gnawing fear. Jake shifted on his feet, struggling to muster some semblance of courage. Harris stepped forward, gripping the handle of a cane. You've made a grave mistake, he said, his blue eyes piercing into theirs. Jake glanced at Sam, panic rising. The old man wasn't who they thought he was. This was no fragile figure, this was someone who commanded respect, even fear. Jake blurted out, backing away instinctively, but Harris didn't move. Oh, I think you're far from leaving. He stood tall, cane pressed against the floor like a shield. Sam tried to regain control of the situation. We didn't mean anything by it. We're just, Harris raised an eyebrow, pity etched across his face. You're more than just lost. You've chosen to invade my home to take what doesn't belong to you. The words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. Sam felt a flush of anger rising. We're not thieving, we just thought. Well, I know you see me as weak, Harris interrupted, his eyes hardening. But let me tell you something, true strength isn't about power. Sam's breath hitched. He'd expected an old man to quake before him, not stand firm like a stalwart guardian. Sam snapped back, but his defiance lacked conviction. I know a lot more than you think, Harris replied. I fought for my country, saw horrors you can't imagine. The crack in his voice hinted at deep-set scars, the reminder of a life lived fully. For a fleeting moment, Sam caught a glimpse of the struggles that lived behind Harris's eyes. A knot formed in his stomach. You think you can just take from others to fill the void inside you, Harris continued, his voice steady but catching the raw emotion of the moment. It was as if the air thickened with an ancient truth, and for the first time, Jake felt the weight of vulnerability. We just wanted money, he admitted, voice trembling. We thought we could be. Harris echoed, stepping closer, his eyes locked on Jake. What you need to understand is that being someone else means being a version of yourself you aren't chasing away. In a bizarre twist of fate, the vulnerability of the moment captivated the boys. Sam's bravado crumbled as he stood face to face with the strength emanating from this man. This wasn't just an old person. This was a warrior, a storyteller, and they were mere children playing at something they didn't understand. Sam asked, fear and curiosity mingling in his voice. "I want you to choose differently," Harris said, his voice calm yet resonating with authority. The gravity of the old man's words weighed heavy on Jake and Sam. They exchanged glances, a silent communication rippling between them, forming the threads of understanding. Every choice mattered, every action had consequences. "I don't want this," Jake whispered, the words spilling from his lips. "I don't want to be." Harris's expression softened, the tension of the moment easing. "Then don't be. Escape the cycle of wanting." Sam took a step back, the world beginning to shift around him. "You're right, we don't want to be this." The old man's gaze softened. "It starts with a choice. Walk away from here, learn from this." Sam echoed, the word tasting foreign yet freeing. "Yes," Harris said. "The real question is, who do you want to be?" As they stood there, hearts pounding, Sam and Jake felt the chains of their past begin to slacken. The thrill of petty thievery evaporated, replaced by an unbearable weight of realization. They realized they didn't want to be defined by moments of desperation anymore. They wanted to be free. "Thank you," Jake said, breathing deeply, relief washing over him, gratitude blooming within. "Thank you for—" Harris nodded, the sorrow of a man who had seen much but who still believed in hope. "Remember that strength comes from understanding, boys." With that, the boys turned to leave, the air outside feeling fresher than before, as if they had stepped into a new reality. The night greeted them with whispers of change, and the stars shone brighter as if celebrating their newfound resolve. As they walked away, side by side, they glanced back at the old man framed in the doorway, a figure of resilience, standing unchanged in the face of their selfishness. They had entered his domain as thieves, but they were leaving as students of life, having learned the essence of true strength. From that day forward, Sam and Jake made different choices. They sought work, learned new trades, and built lives filled with meaning. The lessons imparted by old man Harris echoed in their minds as they navigated the world, refusing to let their past define them any longer. Years went by, and the boys grew into men, finding purpose in their endeavors, their hearts filled with gratitude for the old man who had opened their eyes to the power of choice. They often spoke of him, reminiscing about that fateful night that had altered their paths. One evening, they decided to return to Briarwood, seeking the man who had believed in them when no one else had. They arrived at his house, the familiar sight resonating with nostalgia, memories of that night flooding back. After knocking, the door creaked open. There stood old man Harris, wrinkles deepening into a smile as he recognized the faces of the boys he once challenged. "Look at you," he said, voice warm and inviting. "We wanted to thank you," Sam began, stepping forward, "for showing us who we could be." Harris made room for them to enter, eyes sparkling with pride. They shared stories, laughter, and the warmth of connection that transcended the years. It was a moment of transformation, a celebration of how lives can turn around with a single choice. And there, under the soft light of his living room, they realized that true strength resided not just in their humane transformations, but in the bonds they had formed along the way. They left that night with lessons etched on their hearts, a reminder that even the unlikeliest teachers can change the course of lives, proving that strength never comes from age or appearance, but from the choices that define who we are and who we choose to become. The sound of shattering glass echoed down the dimly lit street, slicing through the stillness of the night. It wasn't the kind of noise one would expect in a quiet neighborhood, especially not at this hour. As crimson shards glimmered under the streetlights, two figures crept away from the scene, hearts pounding with thrill and fear. Sam and Jake had been casing the old man's house for weeks, convinced it was an easy mark. Tonight, they'd made their move. "You see." "Piece of cake," Sam whispered, his breath coming out in quick bursts. He felt invincible, flush with adrenaline. Just an old man. As they watched from a distance, the house stood like a guardian of secrets, its weathered paint and dim lamp glowing like a beacon in the night. Old Man Jenkins, known to the neighborhood as a lonely recluse, lived here, tucked away from the world beyond his garden fence. No one had seen much of him in recent years, and the gossip whispered that he was an easy target. Jake hesitated, glancing around nervously. "What if he's more than he seems?" Sam scoffed. "Old people are all talk." With that confidence, they approached the front door. Sam produced a small crowbar, the metallic gleam reflecting the streetlight above. He jimmied the lock, and with a satisfying click, the door swung open. Darkness beckoned them inside. As they slipped into the house, shadows enveloped them. The air was thick with dust and time, the scent reminiscent of forgotten history. They fumbled through the clutter, rummaging through drawers and cabinets that had long been untouched. Old photos, trinkets, and remnants of a life once rich with love lay scattered across the room. "Grab something valuable," Sam urged, oblivious to the unease gnawing at Jake's mind. The old family photographs were a stark reminder that this place held memories, lives intertwined in ways they couldn't grasp. Suddenly, a soft creak echoed down the narrow hallway, and Jake's heart raced. He whispered, "It's just the house settling," Sam replied dismissively, continuing his search for cash or valuables. But Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Something was off. The atmosphere thickened as they crept deeper into the house, hearts pounding, breaths quickening. Just as they turned a corner, they froze. Standing in the doorway was Old Man Jenkins, his grizzled figure illuminating the gloom like a lighthouse in a storm. His voice was calm, yet steeped in authority. Sam's bravado evaporated. The words stumbled as he tried to regain his confidence. Jenkins stepped forward, gripping a cane with surprising strength. "You think I'm just an old man, vulnerable?" Jake felt fear grip him. This wasn't the timid old person they had envisioned. Instead, they faced a man whose presence commanded respect. "We didn't mean any harm, sir. We'll just leave," he stammered, edging backward. Old Man Jenkins didn't flinch. There was something in his eyes, a flicker of fire that set Sam and Jake on edge. In that instant, they realized they were no longer in control. "Listen, we didn't come to hurt you," Sam blurted out, attempting to maintain some semblance of authority, but it faltered under the weight of Jenkins' gaze. "Do you think taking from me is easy?" Jenkins asked, his voice rising. "I have faced battles in my life far more difficult than you can imagine." The boys exchanged glances, something shifting within them. The old man continued, voice steady, "You'll find that real strength lies in character, not in brute force." Jake suggested quietly, feeling the tide of the encounter shift. "We didn't think this through." Jenkins studied them, his expression softening slightly. "It's not too late to turn back. You can walk away if you understand what this means. Theft isn't just about taking." In that moment, the gravity of the situation washed over Sam and Jake. They were two young men lost in their own recklessness, blinded by desperation. What did it mean to be strong? Why had they chosen this path? "I just wanted to make some quick cash," Sam admitted, vulnerability seeping into his voice. "Every choice you make carries weight," Jenkins replied, his voice steady yet penetrating. "You took a risk tonight, but it's not about whether you get caught. It's about the price of your conscience." Jake's heart raced as he absorbed these words. "Look at yourselves," Jenkins said, gesturing to the mess they had created in his home. "You can either leave here with shame or with the knowledge that you have the power to change." Their breaths quickened as the reality of their actions sank in, the walls of bravado crumbling. Sam looked at Jake, and for the first time they shared a moment of clarity. "I don't want to be like this," Jake said, his voice thick with emotion. "I want." "Then go," Jenkins urged, voice softening. "Learn from this moment. Every person has the ability to change their path." Relief washed over Jake as he stepped back, glancing at Sam, who slowly nodded, understanding blossoming. They turned to leave the house, the weight of their decisions lifting with each step. Once outside, the cool night air enveloped them, igniting a new sense of purpose. They walked down the street, the stars twinkling overhead, reminding them that even in the darkest nights there's always a glimmer of hope. Jake asked, grasping the uncertainty of their newfound reflections. "Let's figure out how to fix this," Sam said, voice firming with resolve. "We'll find jobs." As the days turned into weeks, the boys committed themselves to their new path. They found work at a local construction site, where the labor was tough but fulfilling. They learned the value of earning money honestly, feeling the sweat on their brows become a badge of pride rather than shame. Old Man Jenkins became a ghost in their minds, a constant reminder of the choices they had nearly made. They often discussed how he had opened their eyes, helping them see that real strength came from making the right decisions, even when it was hard. They repainted their lives and sought redemption. Sam took classes at the community college, eager to learn about business. Jake found passion in art, sketching every chance he got, pouring his emotions onto the page. Months passed and they found themselves transformed. No longer the reckless youths who had approached Jenkins' home with ill intentions, they had emerged as motivated individuals with a sense of purpose. "Yeah," Sam replied, nostalgia creeping in. "I wonder how he's doing." "I think we should thank him," Jake suggested, a spark of determination lighting up his eyes. With purpose in their steps, they made their way to Jenkins' house. As they approached, memories of their encounter flooded back, the fear blended with awe at the impact he had made on their lives. They knocked on the door, hearts pounding with anticipation. Moments felt like hours, and just as they began to doubt, the door creaked open to reveal Jenkins, looking just as they remembered, yet somehow even more resilient. He asked, a hint of amusement dancing in his eyes. "We're here to thank you," Sam said, voice steady, filled with sincerity. "You changed our lives." Jenkins grinned, a warmth radiating from him. "I'm proud of you both." "I never knew strength meant so much more than being tough," Jake admitted, feeling gratitude swell in his heart. As they reminisced, sharing stories of their struggles and triumphs, a bond formed that transcended age and background. It was a connection rooted in growth, understanding, and the weight of choice. Jenkins leaned back, a satisfied smile on his lips, knowing he had helped shape the future of two young men who had once lost their way. "The world is full of choices," he shared, eyeing them with pride. "Never stop learning." As they walked away from his house that evening, they felt lighter, no longer shackled by their past. The journey ahead stretched out before them, woven with opportunities, lessons, and endless potential. With each step, they carried Old Man Jenkins' wisdom in their hearts, anchoring them as they ventured into the world. They would not just survive, they would thrive, embracing the strength that came from their newfound understanding of life. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson, Sam and Jake realized they were no longer defined by their failures but empowered by their choices, grateful for the unlikely teacher who had shown them the way. Because in that moment they understood, the greatest strength lies in the courage to change and the wisdom to use it. A sudden crash shattered the quiet of Maplewood on a moonless night. Glass scattered like stars across the pavement as two figures emerged from the shadows, hearts racing with adrenaline and ambition. Sam and Jake had spent weeks planning this, their daring attempt to confront just an old man they assumed would be helpless. "Piece of cake," Sam whispered, a cocky grin stretched across his face. "Look at that house, he probably doesn't even have a lock." But Jake hesitated at the edge of the garden. "What if he's tougher than he looks? You've heard the stories." "Oh, come on. People get old and weak, Jake. He's just some lonely old man. We'll be fine. Trust me," Sam replied, brushing off Jake's concerns like the twigs underfoot. Together, they walked up the cracked path to the front door. It was slightly ajar, forgotten in the solitude of the night. With a surge of confidence, Sam wedged the crowbar inside the frame, prying it open. The door groaned in protest, but it swung wide, revealing an interior cloaked in darkness. Once inside, the place felt heavy with history, each inch of wood and wallpaper steeped in memories long gone. Dust particles danced in the slivers of moonlight that escaped through the curtains. The living room was cluttered with relics, a faded photograph of someone smiling brightly framed next to an old soldier's uniform. But the thieves were oblivious to the memories that lingered. Their hearts beat wildly at the thought of unimaginable wealth tucked away somewhere inside. Sam urged, rushing past an antique cabinet with the speed of a predator. Jake followed but couldn't shake the growing unease that crept up his spine. As he opened the drawer, he found old coins rusted and tarnished by time, alongside yellowed letters that told a story of a life filled with love and loss. "Dude," he exclaimed. But Sam rolled his eyes, moving quickly past Jake's discovery toward what caught his eyes, a safe embedded into the wall. "Just a few more minutes and we'll be loaded," he muttered under his breath, fiddling with the lock. But as if sensing the disturbance, the hairs on the back of Jake's neck stood on end. He murmured, glancing back nervously toward the hallway that led deeper into the home. "Stop being a baby. We're fine," Sam snapped, frustration evident as he twisted and turned the dial. The metal clicked ominously, and suddenly the faint thud of footsteps echoed from the back of the house. Jake's heart raced. He asked, panic creeping into his voice. "Just the old man walking around. He's too frail to put up a fight," Sam shot back. But even he felt the gnawing dread build in his stomach. Moments later, the figure emerged, Old Man Jenkins, standing tall with a cane held firmly in one hand and a determined glint in his eye. The old man's presence was commanding, entirely unexpected, dispelling the notion that he was merely a frail shadow of his past. Jenkins asked, his voice steady, unwavering like the grip of his cane. The shift in the atmosphere was immediate, the thrill of their bold plans evaporating into thin air. Sam stumbled back, shocked into silence, while Jake could hardly form words. We were just..." He stammered, eyes darting, looking for an escape. "You've made quite the mistake, thinking that you could just waltz in here," Jenkins continued, tightening his grip on the cane. The confidence once displayed by the two would-be thieves was overwhelmed by a crushing realization. Old Man Jenkins wasn't just some target. He was a man with stories, experiences that transcended their petty intentions. "Look, we didn't mean to intrude," Sam tried, grasping for any sense of control. But Jenkins didn't budge. "It's too late for that. You think you can just take from me?" Sam's bravado faltered under the intensity of the old man's gaze, vulnerability creeping in. "We just thought we needed the money," he admitted, his voice lowering. "And you chose the cowardly path," Jenkins replied, voice calm yet firm. "You think I'm weak because of my age." Jake felt a shiver run through him. The fierceness of the old man's stance began to unravel something deep within. Jake asked, finally finding his voice. Jenkins took a step closer, the depth of his gaze piercing through the fog of their arrogance. "I fought in a war, dealt with the death of my friends, the sadness that comes with loss." There was gravity in his words, a richness in experience that seemed to transcend their wildest encounters. "We didn't know," Jake whispered, a flicker of empathy igniting in the pit of his stomach. "We only thought. But you didn't consider what it meant to be strong," Jenkins said, taking another step forward. "Strength isn't about the ability to take." In that moment, the world around them changed. The boys stood engulfed in a wave of shame and vulnerability, sensing the weight of their choices. It was as if the house had become a crucible, transforming not just the arguments for survival, but also revealing the truths hidden beneath their skin. Sam asked, the fight in him dissipating. The old man had taken everything they had decided about strength and power and turned it upside down. "Leave," Jenkins instructed, voice lowering to a whisper. "Leave this life behind and find your strength in a better way." A moment of silence enveloped the room, weighing heavily on their chests. The hum of vulnerability echoed in their ears, overpowering the bravado that had once fueled their misguided actions. As they turned to leave, the inner turmoil of regret washed over them like cold water. The night air awaited them, heavy with the promise of something new. Jake felt a sudden weight lift from his shoulders, replaced by some deep yearning for better choices, for redemption. The boys ventured back into the night, the moon rising higher in the sky. They walked silently, reflecting on Jenkins' wisdom. The old man had stripped them bare and revealed the truth about their desires. Jake asked, a hint of doubt still lingering in his voice. "Yeah, we can," Sam replied, determination beginning to resurface. "We just need to make better choices." Days turned into weeks, and they committed to their new paths. The grueling physical labor at a local construction site shaped not just their bodies but their attitudes. They began to find purpose in honest work, the early mornings and calloused hands filled with pride rather than shame. As they adjusted to their new lives, they found themselves often recounting the encounter with Jenkins. It had become a cornerstone of their transformation, a reminder of what they were capable of, both for good and for ill. But the ghost of their past still lingered, and one fateful evening, months later, they found themselves walking back to the familiar street where Old Man Jenkins lived. They wanted to thank him, to show him the changes they'd made. Approaching his house, Jake felt a flutter of nerves mixed with anticipation. What if he didn't remember them? What if they had drifted too far to return? With a deep breath, they knocked on the door. This time the sound felt heavier, as if the weight of their journey rested on the frame. Moments felt like minutes, but finally Jenkins opened the door, leaning against the frame with a glimmer of recognition in his eyes. "Boys," he greeted them, warmth bursting from his smile. "We wanted to thank you," Sam said, a knot in his throat. But before Jenkins could respond, a loud crash interrupted them, followed by raised voices from the alley behind the house. The boys turned to see shadows moving quickly, frantic and dangerous, menacing figures that filled the landscape with startling urgency. Old Man Jenkins' expression shifted as he narrowed his eyes, looking past the boys with a clarity that spoke of experience. "This is a problem," he murmured, the tone deepening. Jake asked, feeling his pulse quicken. The thrill of danger surged, memories of their previous lives echoing in his mind. Jenkins commanded, his voice sharp and decisive. Instinctively, they ducked through the door as Jenkins shut it behind them, securing it with a strength that belied his age. The shadows loomed outside, their chaotic movements turning to shouts. You could sense the fear radiating through the night air. Sam asked, heart racing. "Cutters," Jenkins affirmed, steely resolve etched on his face. "They're after something in this neighborhood." As the boys stood frozen, the adrenaline pumping through their veins, Jenkins moved with a purpose that demanded attention. "Follow my lead." Together, they positioned themselves near the window, peering out at the chaos unfolding. The shadows grew more defined in the moonlight, revealing men clad in dark clothing, aggressive and frantic. The boys' hearts pounded, no longer the reckless thieves but young men forced to confront danger for the first time. Jake whispered, suddenly filled with fear and determination. "Stick together," Jenkins replied, eyes narrowing as he scanned the scene outside. The door shook as heavy thuds echoed from outside. Sam and Jake's breath caught in their throats. Would they face danger again? Would they have the courage they had found within themselves? Then the door gave way just enough for a shadow to spill into the fragile piece of their world. Jenkins stood firm, cane raised, readiness etched into his being. He asked, voice low, filled with purpose. In that moment, standing shoulder to shoulder with a man who had once been a stranger, the boys felt the pulse of courage thrum within them. They weren't backing down this time. This time, they would fight for what truly mattered. As the door crashed open, revealing darkness beyond, they took their place beside Jenkins, united by resolve, prepared to face whatever challenges awaited them. The night was alive with tension, the old man and the boys standing together against the tide of uncertainty that threatened to break through. And in that instant, they knew the journey was far from over, and the lessons they had learned would be tested once again, their true strength about to be put to the ultimate test.